It all starts in 1983 with two young boys, Rob and Bry. Rob Redhead and Brian Wolf. Two young lads in a comprehensive school in Newcastle upon Tyne, England, in the north of England. Two young lads with shoulder-length hair, growing hair, getting picked on by bullies at the school, but not really as bad as it seemed at the time. A lot of it was kind of in our heads, really, especially sort of me, like, really. 3 fights, won 1, lost 1, drew 1, and Brian was a little, like, small. Brian was, like, small. He was, like, not even up to my shoulders. I sort of sprouted up when we were sort of 12, 13. Brian was very small, but, like, when Brian was, like, sort of, got to sort of 17, he just fucking shot up, like 16, 17. He ended up slightly bigger than me, Brian, which was remarkable, really, because he was a little lad. But what we did was sort of bonded together. Brian was sort of scum of the earth, council estate, from a large family that had nothing. And I was a sort of, in a way, a sort of posh kid from the suburbs. And, got all the presents at Christmas, including the electric guitar. So we were a mismatch, but we didn't care because we both had a love of music and we bonded over the music. And because of that, the feeling of getting bullied at school and aggro, the music was what was our escape, but it was what were our friends anyway, but it gave us that sort of, we were best friends, but we had the music as well. And it was a great way of getting really good on the instrument. Like, two things, really. If you're going to a school that you fucking hate, and then you just start playing truant there all the time, because it's shit, everything about it is shit, then, you're going to get good on your instrument quickly. It's the 1980s. It's 1983, 1984. It's, it seemed that there was no internet. There was, it seemed like the music industry was going to go on for decades and decades, hundreds of years, so, there'd be music shops, there'd be record shops, there'd be vinyl records, there'd be, rock stars forever, in 1983, 82, 83, 84. So what me and Brian decided was, we just said, fuck this. So we started going out to Brian's house, and Brian's mother she was out at work a lot, and his older brothers were out the house. They were away, and he basically had the place, this council house, Bry's house, the place to ourselves. There was an outhouse, just a room downstairs. Eventually Brian got bought a drum kit. I got the guitar first. I got my electric guitar first at Christmas. Well, actually, it came a year late, because I thought I was going to get it the Christmas before. But unfortunately, legend has it, my father, who was a taxi driver at the time, blew all the money on beer, and didn't have enough for a guitar that I was going to get that Christmas. So that was spent on, what I got that Christmas was a John Lennon album and a pair of headphones, and I was fucking gutted. I mean, I loved the album, but fuck, I was wanting an electric guitar. I only found that out years later. Whether it's true or not, it probably is true, because 1980s, every fucker was drinking. You look at Av Waders in Pit, it was all about boozing, that's what the culture was, and he probably he would have regretted that, but anyway, things turned out all right in the end anyway. So I got the guitar, the electric guitar, So I would have been like sort of 12 and a half, 13 or something. And we go to Brian's house, and Brian, they were poor. His mother was a single mother. He had 4 brothers and a sister. Hold on a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 brothers and a sister. And, there was, like I say, they were like from the, Pilo, rough Pilo, whereas I was like from up the road at Bilkey originally. So, Brian he had a set of drumsticks. At least he had the drumsticks, so he would he would play the settee, and I would strum on a guitar. And this went on for a few months. One day we sort of decided, me and Brian, let's just steal the drum kit from the school classrooms, because, we need it more than anybody else. So that's what we did one day. Literally just went into school, and walked right the way through the school yard, all the millions of classes, looking down the schoolyard, and here's me, I'm carrying a bass drum, Brian's carrying a snare and cymbals and that. We must have carried it all the way down to Brian's. That's a hell of a trek, like. And, we must have done a couple of trips. Obviously we got caught because, everybody in the whole school saw these 2 lads walking out the school with these drum kits, We got pulled over by the teachers, who said, pulled in one at a time into a classroom to see if we stole the drums. And I says to Brian, Brian, whatever you do, the different nights us, just deny, right? Just deny it. We would know nothing about drum kits. We know nothing. And was, Brian's gone, right, and I will do that, right. So I got pulled in first, and Brian got pulled into another classroom to speak to teachers for interrogation. Of course, they said to me, Robert, we know you and Brian took the drum kit. Did you take that drum kit? And of course, I just went, yeah, we did, yeah. Yeah, actually, we did, yeah. That's what, I'm not going to, I was just like, well, yeah, it's fair cut, And apparently Brian was, afterwards, he says, Brian Gans afterwards, he says, redhead, you twat. I says, what? He says, I was on ages denying it. He was there for fucking ages denying it. So anyway, we got done for that. I think the sort of lefty teachers that were coming into comprehensive schools at the time thought it was quite cool that we're doing that. Like, they're all fucking useless cunts. And, the sort of, letting, there'd be like sort of troublemaker, really damaged kids, like just wandering in after months. Of course, they'd come into the school, they'd bully fucking kids who were wanting to work, and then they'd fuck off, and they were just allowed to come and go, The place was a fucking nightmare, like. A terrible. It was the new experiment they went from the grammar schools in the 50s and 60s to this new thing in the 70s, which was a comprehensive school, which would pull all the kids into just one big school. That was just a disaster. And probably, well, it will still be a disaster, because that's basically, for decades, the standard of education and sort of behaviour of kids has been terrible in Great Britain. Like, it's the home of youth, your culture. So back to the drums, that's it. And so we got caught with that. So obviously Brian's mother thought he really wants a drum kit, didn't he? So I think she had a win on the bingo, Brian's mother, and he got a lovely white pearl drum kit, which was his pride and joy. It was a lovely kit, like Premier. No, it wasn't pearl. It was pearl white, but it was Premier. And that was it. We were off at the races. I had my guitar, Brian had his drums, so we were just sort of touring from school and just rehearsed at Brian's house like every fucking day, you know, learning Hendrix, learning AC/DC, all the sort of rock stuff that we're sort of getting into, learning Rush. And that was actually good that we're into Rush, me and Brian. Brian got me into Rush because that sets the bar high. So, you've got to get, if you want to be able to play some Rush songs, you've got to get good. So, and me, both, the Wagman, we used to call him the Wagman, the truant officer, in between sort of learning with instruments, banging away, drums and guitar. We'd sit and have a cups of coffee at Brian's, in the next room, in the living room, and then a head would pop up at the window with a truant officer with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth saying, "I can see, get back to school now." Sometimes we'd see him, we'd just dive behind the sofa, the settee, or the original drum kit, settee drum kit, and I'd be saying, "Is he still there? Is he still there?" No, I think he's gone now. And that was his job, literally, just to come down, peek his head up above people's windows, and shout and get back to school. So we just ignored him, like, chain smoking, whole bloke, And that eventually stopped. So I think what you sort of teachers, these liberal lefty teachers, probably thought, I mean, we had nearly another year to go, I think, in school. And I think they just left with. They just let with play through it. Obviously, they thought, well, they're probably going to learn better doing music than being in this shit house, because they would have knew it was a shit house as well. So that was it. No exams, no further education, all like that. That was our education, me and Brian's. It was in Brian's house, and we got really good really quick. Now, the next part of the story is me and Brian now. It's sort of 1984. It's the beginning of 1984, I would imagine. And we're getting pretty good on our instruments. We formed a band, me and Brian, with a lad called Jimmy, who was a few years older than us, which was disappointing, because when you're sort of 14, 15, you want 3 years is very, very old. 3 or 4 years ahead is like pensioner, So Jimmy was in the band. He had a bass guitar. He was a good bass player. He was a good lad. So we used to rehearse, the three of us, doing Rush covers in this old library in Bilkey, which is no longer there, which they knocked down. It was like, the old library was a building that was it would have been on the end of a row of terraced houses down at the bottom of Bilkey. And all these terraced houses had all been demolished in the 1960s. And it was just, there's two buildings left. One of them was the library, and the other one was a pub called the Cricketers, which was further down. And the Cricketers are still there, but the library got knocked down probably, I think, in the 90s. And we used to rehearse there. And one day, I don't know how it happened, but we used to listen to the Hot and Heavy Express, Alan Robson. That was on every sort of Friday, Saturday night. And, obviously we're too young to be going to pubs, although we did a little bit, like, me and Brian. But we did sneak into a couple of pubs a few times, like at 13. We started doing that, actually. And so Hot and Heavy Express, Friday, Saturday night, play the disc jockey, Alan Robson, play all the songs, all the heavy metal songs, all the heavy rock songs. And there was one of the sort of theme tune of the show, the Hot and Heavy Express, was a song from a band called Satan, who were a local band, and it was actually a good song. Can't remember now, but it was a good song, like. And we knew of Blitzkrieg, the name Blitzkrieg and Satan, and we were getting to know the names of the local bands also, because he would play the local bands. So you get Raven on, Tyson Dog, Avenger, and so anyway, there's 3 of us playing in this own library, and I don't know how it happened, but we're looking for a singer, and Alan Rob, what is it? Is it Brian Robson, the singer from Blitzkrieg, what came to audition for us, and okay, is that his name? I can't remember his name. But we thought, oh well, that's okay, because he's in Satan. I know what he sounds like because we heard him on the radio, so he'll come along. So he came along for an audition, and he sang. He must have been looking for a band. He must have just left Satan or Blitzkrieg or something. And he was I don't know what he thought, because we're just 2 kids in a sort of slightly older kid. The 3 were. But anyway, we've done this session. He says, well, that's it. He says, what do you think? I says, I sound good, He says, so am I joining your band? And I looked at Brian, and I says, what we'll do is I'll give you a ring back, right? And we've got somebody else to see as well. But, it's been great. So he went, oh, all right. So off he went, get in touch. And Jimmy, the bass player, who was slightly older than us, is saying, what you doing, man? You should have said yes, man. It's Brian Robson. It's Blitzkrieg singer, man. You should have said yes. And I says, yeah, but did you not hear how old he said he was? He's 30 years old. 30. And Jimmy's gone, well, it doesn't matter. He's a great singer. It's Brian Ross, that was it. It's Brian Ross from Blitzkrieg. I says, it's too old, And Brian's nodding away with me. He says, Brian's like, and it is old, like. So that was me and Brian, we knew Neat Records. We knew the bands. We knew what was out there. And I'm sorry, but 30-year-old was just too old for us, like. But he was a good singer. And he went off and done his Blitzkrieg thing again, I think. So by that time, me and Bri have started to focus in on doing some demo work, right? Intricate stuff. Also, so we've started sending demo tapes. We sent a demo tape into Neat Records, right? Now something else. It's a lot of it's all about luck. It's all about who you're not, and it's the reason why I bring up the Brian Ross thing really is and what I'm going to say now is really because it's about how, when I look back, how small Newcastle was. In a way, like, for these reasons, right? Venom's Abaddon, Tony Bray, right? He's walking past my house, right? Because we'd moved up to up the Peel, my family, my parents and my brother, and then we moved up to the countryside, but we were there for like a year. But in that time, Abaddon's walking past my house, right? We knew that Venom, Abaddon's roadie, was a guy called Gordon, a lad called Gordon. We knew Gordon. Gordon was a year above us, and he was a friend of one of Brian's brothers. So Abaddon, Tony would walk to see his girlfriend, his wife, with the kid, because he had a kid. And this was in the this was a few doors down from where Brian lived. So Abaddon is hearing us rehearsing. He's hearing me playing the guitars. He's walking past because I'm looking out the window waiting for him coming past. And I'm fucking turning it up to 11 when he walks past because it's this massive fucking, well, we all know what he looked like. And that's walking down the street, you know. And I'm looking at him thinking, fucking hell, he's got some bottle, hasn't he? The fucking skinheads are knocking around here. Pelo Boot Boys will have him, like. You got to fucking give him the respect, like, you know. So it was quite funny, like, you know. But, you know, when you're young, it's like everything's sort of blown out of proportion a little bit, you know, with the threat level of skinheads. Or was it? I don't know. Possibly. Probably not, actually. So Abaddon's walking past my house, you know. Gordon, the roadie, knows me and Brian. We've had Brian Ross come and audition for. There was an advert in the paper. Tyson Dog were wanting a guitar player. Right, so I went and done this. It's sort of 15 years old. I went across the Wall's End, the Coach and Horses, I think it was called, practically opposite Neat Records. And I knew that was Neat Records. I don't know how I knew all this, like. But anyway, I had that with them, learned their song, Eat the Rich. Thought, that's it, I'm going to be in this band, and this is the first step in the ladder to superstardom. So done that, and didn't get the job. And that was my first big turn down. I was gutted by that, like. But in a very short time later, something's happened. Something's happened at the Neat Records, Impulse, Neat Records, right? With the Venom and the manager, Eric, and Jed and whatever's going on. That there's the word's getting out because they've listened to the demo tape. Jed liked the demo tape, apparently, that I'd sent in. And, you know, maybe there's been a few things said, oh, that's that. Oh, I know him. I know Rob, you know, oh, is that lad who every time I walk past his house, he's fucking guitars on 11. So there's all this sort of stuff happening. And like I say, it's just funny how back then, the 80s, like, it was just a small, I mean, it wasn't a small, it was a, you know, it's a small city even in the 80s, you know, but, you know, it's just a funny thing. Everybody sort of seemed to know everybody. And so I got I don't know how I got the phone. I must have put my phone number in there on the demo tape. So Jed gives us a ring and said, oh, I've heard the demo tape, like what you're doing, man. Do you want to come along for an audition? So I went along for an Atomkraft audition. Didn't know it was going to be called Atomkraft. It was just going to audition with these two lads. So, well, I didn't even know there were two lads. I just turned up at this sort of bombed out rehearsal studio, Desert Sounds in the Felon, which was actually a great little studio. The lad was a really good producer in there. It was an 8-track tape, real jobby, old school. Proper, you know, when you walked along the carpet, your soles of your shoes stuck to the carpet because of all the beer that had been spilled. Holes in the wall, graffiti on the wall, dead punky 1970s. So I go in there, it's Tony Dolan and there's Jed on his kit, you know, and I'm just thinking, first thing I thought is like, fucking hell, they're a bit old, aren't they? So, but they were basically, I'm 16 now and they're like 20 or something, two of them. And rehearsed with them straight away. It was good, just spot on. I felt like Jed was more open to us. I think Jed had made his mind up, like as long as I sort of fitted in on this rehearsal. And of course, we started writing straight away on the rehearsal as well, like, and sort of Jerry said, well, he can write as well, like, so we need that, like, so. I don't think Tony Dolan was that impressed. I think he's probably thinking I was maybe he's a little bit green, a little bit young. Like, probably what Tyson Dog had thought, you know. But anyway, we actually wrote the Carousel song. And that was it. We just done that rehearsal. At the end, Jed says, must have done that for about 2 or 3 hours. At the end, she says, loved it, great. Jed's gone great. So do you want to join the band then? Do you want to join me? And I says, you know, I says, give us 24 hours to think about it. Hey, I'll give you a ring, right? And Jed's like a bit taken aback, you know. Right, okay, then do that. Well, I'll give you a ring tomorrow. He said, you know, so he gives us a ring. So I left the rehearsal. My dad picked us up. I jumped in the car, and he's taking us back home. He says, right, and how'd it gone? I says, oh, it went really well, it went brilliant. He says, so you're joining them, are you? I says, not a chance. I says, they're a bit old. And I says, apart from that, I says, the drummer, he's saying stuff, he's saying like they're going to be going on tour, right? He says, we're going to be doing an album straight away. We're going to be going on tour of Europe with Venom. I says, Dad, man, I says, they're a couple of dreamers. They're a couple of dreamers, man. And then my father said the immortal line, right then, well, what you going to, well, if you didn't join them, what you going to do? Sit in the bedroom for the rest of your life. And of course, that was the thing. That was the one that made us go, right, I'll show you. So Jade phones up the next day and I goes, he says, right, what's happening? Are you joining? I says, oh, definitely I am in, And Jade goes, good, get down to my house tomorrow. And I've got some videos to show you of Venom and that, and we'll talk about where we're going and what the tour is going to be and what the album we need to start writing some songs. I said, great, great. And that was the beginning of that. Now, Brian, while all this started happening, Brian was overlooked because obviously Jed was a drummer. And I got sort of swept on the Atomkraft thing, right? But during that first year of 1985, I'm sort of gone off on tour, and poor Brian's sitting, like, he's not going on tour. You know, he's not doing anything. But I kept on saying to people, me mate Brian, he's a great drummer. And one day, Tony Dolan, he was talking about his mate, Steve White. They put up, his band needs a drummer. I says to Dolan, I says, look, you've got to get, he has to try out me mate Brian. He's a brilliant drummer, you know. So that's what they did. And Brian obviously got the job straight away because he was a great drummer, you know. And that was Brian signed to a signed band, you know, and they released an album. So, you know, going from a couple of kids, you know, playing truant and heading up for school and just walking out. 2 years earlier, you know, we did get to. I mean, Brian didn't. Unfortunately for Brian, he didn't get in any way have the experiences that I had. In his teens that I did with Atomkraft, he did though get to, you know, to record an album on neatrecords, and you know, that was a big thing, man. You know, it wasn't just Newcastle label, you know, Venom were on it, you know, and Venom was sort of hitting the big time, like, you know. it was the whole of the northeast of England and even Scotland, or the north of England. Bands were wanting to get onto Neat Records. And certainly me and Brian, lads of our age, what, when you lads of our age who were musicians and who had bands, and they didn't get to do any of that, and we got signed to Neat Records, and that's what I like to think. That's what I like to think about that. Rob and Bry, we made it to Neat Records.